Well, hello everyone and welcome. I'm Christine Bright. I'm the current chair of the Pasco unit of the League of Women Voters. And I want to call your attention to our little welcoming screen here. We are going to be hosting today our Hidden Hunger in Pasco panel discussion, focusing on food insecurity of children in Pasco County. Each of our speakers, and we have 5 panelists today, are going to speak for up to 10 minutes. And we're going to ask questions from the chat. And after Patti Templeton, our first panelist, speaks, we're going to ask questions of Patti. And then we're going to hear the presentations of the next 4 speakers and take questions again after our 5th panelist, Dianna Thomas, speaks. So we're going to really open the panel discussion with an organization in Pasco that is hands-on, doing what they can to alleviate food insecurity among school-aged children in Pasco. And we're going to close our panel speakers with another organization that is also working hands-on to alleviate food insecurity among school-aged children in Pasco. I would ask that when you enter your chat questions, you enter them to everyone so the chat reader can see them. And if you want to direct your question to one of the panelists, you can send the chat to everyone, but name the panelist in your question. And also, I would ask that you remain muted with your video off during the presentations so that we have just the speaker, in view. And we appreciate your assistance in conducting this event. I would like to say a little bit about the League Women Voters. And many of you already know the League is a nonprofit, nonpartisan political organization. And the League was formed in 1920. This is our 100-year anniversary, the 100-year anniversary of the League of Women Voters. Along with our active, strong program in voter services, we also educate and advocate about issues that concern all of us, and that leads us to our discussion today about hunger in our community. I'm going to introduce Patti Templeton, who is the Executive Director of One Community Now. Patti Templeton was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, where she grew up experiencing the impact that poverty, hunger, and violence can have on a community. After graduating from the University of Detroit Mercy with her bachelor's degree in marketing and management, she married her husband, Mark, and moved to Florida. While raising her 2 sons, Patti went back to school to earn her master's degree in Christian leadership and worked as the outreach minister at Generations Christian Church for 16.5 years. In 2009, Patti, along with 9 other church members, founded One Community Now as a nonprofit organization with the mission of bringing churches, businesses, charities, and government agencies together to help meet the unmet needs in Pasco County. At the end of 2017, Patti left her position as the outreach minister to become the executive director of One Community Now, where she has been able to focus full-time on developing programs to help eradicate childhood hunger, to end veteran homelessness, and to empower families out of poverty. Patti is an active member of the Rotary Club of Newport Richey, Tampa Bay Network to End Hunger, and she serves on the executive board of Habitat for Humanity of Pinellas and West Pasco. She was recently recognized as the Community Partner of the Year by the National Association of Social Workers for her work in the community. Welcome, Patti. The Zoom is yours, my dear.
Okay.
Is yours.
Thank you very much. And I just want to thank the League of Women Voters for even keeping this topic in the forefront as far as childhood hunger and the impact it has on all of us ultimately. The main program that we're going to talk about here that we do in Pasco County is the PAC-A-STAC program. And you'll also hear from Dianna Thomas that she has a similar program. And together, we're able to cover most of the schools in Pasco County. One Community Now focuses on the on the west side and the central. We have a few schools in the central part of the county. So we're currently in 37 different elementary, middle, and high schools, and we're feeding over 1,600 children. And with PACASAC, we're feeding them on the weekends. So prior to coronavirus, we were seeing some success in fighting childhood hunger, food insecurity. The numbers were starting to get a little bit lower, even though there was still a great need for it. But it really came to light when coronavirus hit. We just really saw how on not only the weekend food, but also the food that they're getting through the school system. And together our community, I believe, has really stepped up and partnered together through collaboration, and we've been able to try to meet a lot of that need by continuing the programs at the school with the weekend feeding programs. Also the assistance that's come from the CARES funding to help with food pantries, and also with financial assistance for housing, utilities, mortgages, things like that. The PACASAC program does provide about 10 to 12 food items to the children. The way we organize our program is we partner with churches and civic organizations and businesses. So what we do is we look for one entity to adopt a school, and then we partner with them as well. So we do most of the fundraising, the grant writing, going out in the community, trying to get the financial assistance for the program. And then those partners, if they're churches or other organizations, they're the ones that are actually buying the food, packing it, and then they're delivering it to the schools. The success we've seen with this program is by having these church partners and civic organizations. It's bringing more awareness to them. A lot of times people just don't realize what the needs are in the community. And as these, as the partners start to see and they hear the stories from the teachers and the parents of the great need in the community, that brings that awareness to an even greater level. And then there's, the ability to respond in different ways. So through our PACASAC program, we see many of our partners expand it into a back to school supply drive, or maybe Christmas items. Some will even provide a full meal for the families for things like Thanksgiving and Christmas. With our program, we also do surveys twice a year of the parents, the teachers, and the students, just to determine how effective is the PACASAC program. What we have found, over the years and through studies on hunger, is that children that are struggling with hunger have a lower attention span. They may have greater absenteeisms. They have other physical ailments that come as a result of hunger. And so as we are feeding the kids, and we do the surveys just to see, are we seeing any impact and any difference? So in our surveys with our teachers, they regularly, I would say about 75% to 80% always tell us that they do see a difference in the kids once they're on the PACASAC program, especially on Monday mornings, because the kids are coming in now where they've had some food, where before they may have been struggling over the weekend, and they would come in on Monday morning and just, they're starving. They're any food that the school is giving, they're trying to, they're hoarding or rushing the food lines. They're asking if they can have extras. So PACASAC alleviates that Monday morning starvation, I would say, that the kids are facing. We also see from both parents and teachers that they see the kids' behavior is better in the school. And then also their overall attendance, especially on Friday, picks up, because that's when they get their food, is on Friday. And then they also have seen, grades overall increase. Going back to coronavirus, one of the things that it's really brought about as well is new families that may have never had to go to food banks before or get assistance. So we're working with a lot of new families that are in the program. Some of them may not necessarily know about how to apply for food stamps or how to apply for the school nutritional programs. And so, as we're working with a lot of our families in the schools and our partners, we're trying to bring more awareness to that so that we're getting more families in there. We partnered with Pasco County, the CARES program, in the United Way. Steffan, I'm sure will talk more about that, but we also have been able to provide many of these exact same families with hot meals throughout the week. So it's just been a real collaborative effort in Pasco County where we've been able to work together to get food to these families that are in need. And, you know, again, where we're seeing the numbers are really spiking, where there's a lot more, the families that were struggling before are even in worse situations. And then there's so many more new families that are coming to light now. So again, I just thank you for bringing this topic up and keeping it in the forefront, because it is through awareness and education that we're going to be able to help, you know, solve these problems, and by joining together and take care of this problem of feeding our kids and not having to face food insecurity.
Patty, there's one question coming out of the chat from Christine. How many pack-a-sacks are delivered monthly?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the cost of each pack-a-sack?
Okay, each sack for us costs under $5, and we deliver every week. So like I said, we're feeding, I think it's $16.29 a week, 1,629 kids or sacks go out every weekend. So quick math on that. Under 8,000 sacks are going out every weekend. So, and most of our schools are in the range of anywhere from 20 to about 60 kids that are being fed in their schools. We're currently in 37 schools, and those do make up elementary, middle, and high school. And the food that we're giving them, you know, ideally, of course, we want it to be as nutritional as possible. So we do consider that, but we also have to know that some of those families may not have electricity or proper refrigeration. So they do need to be non-perishable, child-friendly opening products. So what we focus on is providing 2 breakfast items. So those can be the cereal boxes or bowls. It can be, we buy the non-perishable milk for them. We may have breakfast bars or instant oatmeal if we know the family, you know, does have access to at least hot water. Our lunch items would include things like raviolis, beanie weenies. We always include peanut butter, crackers. You know, we want to try to get protein in there. We include 100% juice. We also have things like fruit cups, so maybe applesauce or the mixed fruit, the raisins. And so we're trying to stay away from giving them the high carb items like cookies and chips and, you know, just filler type food. Okay, so one of the questions says, what option does an individual have to help with this program? We look for partners to, of course, financially is the first, the biggest thing, because as our organization oversees the entire program, as we collect funding, we are able to then divide that out and assist any of the schools, you know, that might need, if they need more children fed. Occasionally, we've even had, of course, with coronavirus, we've had some churches that have really had to shut down. They've been hurt financially. So we make a commitment to our schools that we will feed the children for the entire school year, no matter what happens with the partner. So, you know, the way we set our program up is we tell our partners that we will give them at least 50% of the funding that they're going to need for their program. So the best way for anybody to help, of course, is financially, but we also look for partners that are interested in either adopting a school where an organization can say, yeah, I'll make a commitment to that school. And then we have a few of our partners or school partners and church partners that could use extra volunteers. So we have, I know, a couple different churches here on the west side of Pasco that they allow volunteers to come in usually once a month, and they do packing for that. So for our it says, Patty, do you have long-term funding? What we have is really just writing grants, and you know, we have a lot of individual private donors that support us. We currently don't have any endowment funds that have been awarded to us, but we do, you know, we're continually looking for new partners to support us. We get, I would say, about 50% of our financial support comes in through private support, and then the other 50% is a combination of grants and foundations that award us things. We do hold once a year a fundraiser. It's called the Hunger Walk, and last year, prior to coronavirus, we raised $117,000 at that Hunger Walk. This past year, our Hunger Walk had to be turned virtual, and we were only able to raise at the point of the event up to $58,000. So we've been doing a lot of requesting and helping, for people to donate to help us reach our goal for this year. But we fully expect to go back into the Hunger Walk in the fall of 2021, where we usually, our goal again is to raise $125,000 there. The question is, do you have participants in the schools in Meadow Point area? If I knew the name of the school, I could tell you. If it's in West Pasco, we have every school covered in West Pasco. If it's on the east side, I will probably refer that to Dianna with Thomas Promise, because she does most of the east side of the county.
Patti, there was just one other question. Someone had asked, how is eligibility for a PACASAC determined?
Okay, we asked the schools to determine that. So we have a close relationship at every one of our schools. We either work with the social workers or a guidance counselor or the school secretary. We have a referral form that we give to the school, and that way they can pass it out to the teachers to determine which of the children that would qualify. And it's usually most of them are on free or reduced lunch. Most of them are on free lunch already. And then when they know of a family situation. So we've had families that have come into our program where maybe a parent is, has cancer, they're terminal, or maybe a parent has passed away. And they're not all long-term situations. Sometimes we've had people that have lost their jobs, and then they'll come back to the school and let them know, and they'll go off the program so another child can go on to the program. But it's the school that determines which are the neediest children. It's estimated that about 15% of the children that would be on free lunch would be chronically hungry. So, in Pasco County, if we're looking at about I think it's around 46,000 kids, we estimate between 5,000 to 6,000 of those children would be truly chronically hungry, not knowing where their next meal will come from at all. Any other questions?
Excuse me, I was still muted. I think that's all of the questions so far.
Okay.
But thank you so much, Patti. That was very, very informative. Very informative.
Sure, thank you.
And I know you have another commitment today. You're going to stay on as long as you can, but you might
Yes.
have to leave a little early.
Yes.
Okay, all righty. Well, let's move on to our next panelist. Our next panelist is Steffan Davis with United Way of Pasco. Steffan was raised in Pasco County and attended Gulf High School before enlisting in the Army at age 17 as an infantryman. After his military service, Steffan graduated from Purdue University, earning a degree in criminal justice. Steffan has worked as the community fundraising director for WEDU and the local PBS station. His accomplishments include successful leadership as a political organizer for a state party and serving in this capacity on a major presidential election. Steffan now resides in West Pasco with his fiance and 8-year-old son, and is the Community Impact and Allocations Manager for the United Way of Pasco County. Welcome, Steffan. The screen is yours.
Thank you so much, Christine, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. So I made a little presentation. I'm going to see if I could share my screen, if that's okay. There we go. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so what this program's gonna, this PowerPoint's gonna cover is what is the United Way, Alice report, the impact that COVID's had, our response to COVID, Operation Feeding Pasco, future challenges, and Q&A slide, or we can refer to that later. What is the United Way? Our mission is to identify needs in the community and address those needs by developing resources and allocating those resources. 70% of our funds come from employee campaigns, such as Publix, Furman Auto Dealership, UPS. We identify needs that affect the community and try to address those to the best of our ability. As of the last grant cycle, we invested in about 40 Pasco County agencies, funding about 50 programs through a local citizen review process. So it's all volunteer driven where those funds are being allocated to. We partner with the government at multiple levels to serve as a fiduciary of funds, such as FEMA funds coming in through EFSP, county outside agency allocation funds, and a variety of government funds that come through the county. Here's some of our partner agencies as of the last grant cycle. Some of this has changed kind of recently. This was up to date as of last grant cycle, so just a couple of months ago. Most recently, we came out with a new ALICE report that showed 45% of Pasco households fall under the ALICE threshold. What this means is that they're asset limited, income constrained, but employed. So these are people who are employed, but just barely making it. They're about one disaster away from slipping into poverty. For a lot of people, the effects that COVID has had on the economy was exactly that disaster. So these numbers don't reflect what's kind of transpired this year. During that time, before that time, 13% of our county fell under the poverty line. And of course, this changes by the geographic location. Some locations have much higher percentages of people who fall under the ALICE threshold. Lukuchi is a particularly hard hit area where about 60% of the population falls under the ALICE threshold. It's also known as what's called a food desert. So there's not a lot of food resources within that area. The impact that COVID's had, it's kind of obviously hard to put on one slide. Food insecurity has been exacerbated and is underreported because the things like the ALICE report were taken long before the effects that COVID had. Unemployment rate as of this morning, I think I saw, was 7% within the county, which was around 5% before COVID. Many households experience loss or decline of income at some point in time. Food distributors experienced a huge surge of requests. I know I spoke to Feeding Tampa Bay right around when COVID was first happening and those first lockdowns were coming in. They said that they were experiencing about 360% more requests on their website. Our response to that, by living up to our mission of addressing the needs to the best of our ability, was Operation Feeding Pasco. Operation Feeding Pasco is an innovative program created by the United Way Pasco County and Pasco County government to use federal funds to keep restaurants open and feed food insecure people. We're actually just getting ready to move on our fourth round of funding of Operation Feeding Pasco. The first round was a $600,000 grant that was given to us from the county that was funded by FEMA. And what this program is we partner with locally owned restaurants. We pay them at a rate to provide hot meals to these agencies, such as One Community Now, Thomas Promise, Volunteer Way, to distribute these meals, to do what they do best and address those needs and distribute those meals, both serving as an economic boost to those restaurants. I know some restaurants laid off their entire kitchen staff, and by us having these funds and partnering with them, they were able to bring some of, if not all, their kitchen staff back to work, keeping people employed. We partnered with 12 locally owned restaurants, 19 nonprofit agencies. By the end of the year, we will have dispersed more than 250,000 hot meals. These are high quality meals that anybody would be happy to eat. Over $2 million in funding will be dispersed to locally owned restaurants. So again, both serving as an economic boost and addressing food insecurity in the community. Since the first round of funding, which was a $600,000 grant provided through FEMA, through the county, it's now moved to CARES funding. We're getting ready to move on to our fourth round of Operation Feeding Pasco, which will be a $630,000 grant, which will be dispersed between now and the end of the year. Future challenges. CARES funds will be expiring. Any funds that are not used by January 1st must be returned. Pretty much all the aid that's out there right now has a sunset date of January 1st. So right around the corner, a lot of aid is going to disappear. Moratoriums have ended. Evictions will be proceeding as normal on January 1st. So what that means is people who had money to provide food for their family will now have to use that money to either find a new location, pay back rent. They're trying to play catch up now. There's a variety of issues there. Utility shutoffs have resumed. Duke Energy, TECO, a lot of these utility companies have actually created grants. I know through Duke Energy, we're a partner with Duke Energy. So we run a program called Energy Neighbor Funds. Basically what that is that the Duke Energy gives us a certain amount of funds to pay to stop utility shutoffs for customers who've been affected by COVID so that they can get their utilities paid for. It just has to be a Duke Energy customer. Again, the funds never meet the need, unfortunately. So there's always more need than there is funds. And that's just basically how it goes though. But utility shutoffs have resumed. And again, that's going to be meaning that people are going to be using resources that they otherwise could have used for basic necessities like food. They're going to have to use that for water and electricity as well. Fundraising challenges for agencies. I know the United Way funding model is highly dependent upon employment. How we stay funded is by employees enrolling in payroll deduction. So that's where they gave a small amount through their paycheck, each paycheck cycle. So we're highly dependent upon the unemployment rate within the community. I know collections are down across the board for a lot of agencies, and a lot of grant funders stopped giving out grants throughout the state and throughout the country. Again, a lot of these nonprofits were overburdened before COVID. It already felt like there was never enough money to meet the need, and that's only been exacerbated by COVID. County governments also, county governments who used to, some like to run balanced budgets and were running balanced budgets prior to COVID, are now experiencing deficits this year. So some of the aid that the county governments used to give out might or might not disappear. I mean, they're experiencing challenges no different than us. Their revenue, their sales tax revenue is down. Their revenues are down. So they're experiencing challenges no different than us. So some of that aid might dry up, may or might not. I just want to highlight that Pasco County government has been incredibly generous and has been a great partner during this emergency. And that's it for the presentation. I don't know if we're opening it up to questions now or if we're going to be opening up for questions again later.
We are going to wait until the other presenters.
Okay.
Just to move the presentations along and then ask questions following.
Okay,
all
perfect.
Okay, Steffan?
Sounds good.
All righty. And our next presenter is Ashley Jones. And Ashley Jones, and I'm happy to introduce Ashley. Ashley holds a degree in food and nutrition from the University of Alabama, along with a second degree in business administration from the University of South Florida. Throughout her studies, she developed a passion for child nutrition and knew she wanted to build a career focused on feeding and fueling students. Her career in child nutrition began as a student nutrition service manager for Hillsborough County Schools, managing both an elementary and a middle school. She later joined Pasco County Schools in 2018 as a district nutrition specialist. Ms. Jones' current role consists of product forecasting and implementation, recipe development, menu planning, student taste testing, and coordinating the summer food service program for Pasco County. Her favorite person to develop recipes for is her 1-year-old sous chef, Jaden. Welcome, Ashley. The screen is yours.
Thank you, Christine. So I have a presentation that I'm going to be sharing as well. Let me go ahead and put that on the screen. Can everybody see that?
Yes, we can see.
Yes. Perfect. So I also want to thank you so much for having me today. Given our current situation with coronavirus, it has been difficult for us to do our traditional community outreach. So any opportunity that we have to talk about Pasco County schools is greatly appreciated. So today I'm just going to give you guys a brief overview of what our program consists of and kind of how we were functioning pre-COVID-19 and what we are doing now to feed our students. So our overall mission is building a healthier student body. This represents our commitment of providing nutritious meals to help students succeed and build a healthy foundation for a healthy lifestyle. So we actually have 4 registered dietitians on our staff. So we take nutrition very seriously while also trying to manage a fiscally responsible budget. So how do we accomplish feeding our students? So we are actually funded through the United States Department of Agriculture. They disperse funds to each individual state, and then the Florida's Department of Agriculture disperses those funds to our program. And we receive those funds in a couple different ways. One way is through reimbursement for the meals that we serve. So we feed our students, and then we submit a claim, and the Florida Department of Agriculture will reimburse us based on whether a student receives free meals, reduced meals, or whether they are paying for their meals. And then we also receive entitlement funds, which are similar to a grant. So based on how many students we fed the previous school year, the Florida Department of Agriculture will give us funds that we can use to supplement our program. And a big way that we invest those funds is to provide fresh fruits and vegetables for our students. So in order for us to continue receiving these funds from the government, we do have strict nutrition standards that we do have to meet with our meals, which is actually great because these standards align with our healthy guidelines for Americans. So it's nice that we are modeling the same nutrition requirements that we expect for the entire country in our schools. So you'll see that all of the grains, or a majority of the grains that are on our menu, are going to be whole grains. We provide a variety of fruits and vegetables, a variety of proteins as well. We know students love their chicken and their beef, but we do try to find alternative sources of proteins for them as well. Things like fish, turkey, eggs, cheese. We've actually are currently looking into dried chickpeas, anything we can to try to expand the proteins that we offer. All of our students are also able to select fat-free or skim milk at our schools. And then we also have calorie ranges, sodium, and saturated fat limits that we have to stay within throughout the week as well when it comes to creating our menus. So before COVID-19, we had about a little over 75,000 students enrolled in our school system. Our breakfast program averaged over 21,000 meals per day. Our lunch program averaged over 36,000 meals per day. Our after-school supper program averaged over 1,800 meals per day. And then our summer program, which we typically run between June and July, would previously serve over 225,000 meals. So once COVID-19 hit, it was a huge impact on our program, only because after spring break back in March, schools remained closed. So we had to come up with a way to feed all of our students that relied on coming into our cafeterias that were now closed. Thankfully, the United States Department of Agriculture released emergency waivers that allowed us to offer free meals to every child in our community that was 18 and under. So this was a robust program that we had to implement at 26 of our school sites. So from mid-March through the second week of August, we served over 1.6 million meals to the children in our community. And basically what this consisted of was on Monday, our staff would come in and package a week's worth of breakfast and a week's worth of lunches. And there would be a variety of different things in these meal meal packages, things that could be thawed and served, things that did require heating, but we also included heating instructions as well. And then on Tuesday, we offered contactless pickup. So parents would pull up, they would signal how many children they had in their vehicle or how many children they had at home. And then our staff would load these meals into their trunk. And then we did also have a couple bus sites as well. So then once school resumed, those emergency waivers that we relied on ended. So it made it very challenging to feed our students who were attending school brick and mortar while simultaneously feeding those students that decided to do virtual learning. But thankfully, the United States Department of Agriculture ended up extending these critical waivers. They did this at the end of August, and then this would go through the rest of our school year. So this allowed us to resume feeding all children in our community for free, which was fantastic because we were able to, with our current feeding structure, we're able to feed our students that are attending school brick and mortar. They receive free breakfast and free lunch daily. And then children who are learning virtually, who may be homeschooled or not yet attending school, are able to visit any of our school sites on a Friday morning and pick up meal packages that contain a week's worth of meals. And then I'll have more information further along that'll show you if you want to know more about our curbside feeding program. And then we are still running our supper program at several of our school sites. We are working on expanding that, but that does allow us to provide meals for kids at the end of the school day. So currently, we are not feeding as many children as we were pre-COVID-19. I would say our participation is down probably around 30% right now, but numbers are increasing. We are trying to reach more children. Not everyone is used to the idea of meals being free throughout the whole school year, so we are trying to expand that. Last month, we were able to serve over 900,000 total breakfasts and lunches. And then through our curbside feeding program, we served over 180,000 meals. And then the total after school meals that we were able to serve last month was almost 16,000. So for anybody that's interested in finding out information on our curbside meal pickup program, you can visit our website. There you can find what time each school site does their curbside pickup. And it's the same thing we were doing over summer where it is contactless delivery. You pull up, you let them know how many students you're feeding, and they will load those into your trunk. And then we also have online menus. So if you visit mealviewer.com, you can see what we're serving in our schools. We have our breakfast, our lunch menus posted. We also have our curbside feeding menu posted as well. So you can see what would be in those meal packages, as well as cooking instructions. And then we are on social media. So if you would like to see kind of the other things that we're doing, ways that we are engaging our students, ways that we are trying to reach out to the community, you can follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter. So thank you so much for allowing me to present today.
Thanks. Let me get video up. There we go. So thank you so much. Again, it's very, very informative. I really appreciate it. And I wanted to remind you that even though we're not asking questions after each speaker or after each panelist, that you can still enter your questions now, and so that you know you have plenty of time to get those questions in the chat before the end of our program. And I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Beth Hovind. Beth is a member of the Poverty Action Team with the Florida League of Women Voters. Beth's mother was a member of the League of Women Voters in Madison, Wisconsin, and Beth joined after her first child was born. Starting again with the North Pinellas League in 2014, she soon initiated the Poverty Committee to raise the issues of surrounding poverty and its impact on our communities. In 2019, with the assistance of talented members, sponsors, and support from the North Pinellas and St. Petersburg Leagues, the committee organized the Poverty Summit with an internationally known speaker, attracting more than 70 agency leaders to prioritize action steps to address poverty at the state level. The committee meets locally and holds Zoom meetings with members from other chapters now, other league chapters, now focusing on the impact of COVID-19. Beth earned her master's in social work degree and worked for various agencies in Wisconsin and California. She assisted the County Child Welfare Office of Wisconsin, directed a housing project for low-income women, supervised an incest treatment program, and directed a youth program. She worked for the Wisconsin Department of Health and Social Services, directing statewide programs and staffing for the Governor's Council on Domestic Abuse. She taught social work at a state university connected to the University of Wisconsin. Beth has had a long social work career. Beth lives in Tarpon Springs, and she enjoys traveling, visiting Alaska, and writing. Beth, welcome, and the screen is yours.
Beth, you're muted.
I know it. I'm okay. I just realized that. Can you see the PowerPoint on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I want to make a correction. I am no longer the chairman of the state poverty action team for the League of Women Voters. In March, when this was first planned, this event, I was. Now I am co-chair of the poverty action team for Pinellas County. So thank you for having me, and I'm excited to be here and do a little discussion about poverty. First of all, if we look at poverty rates, in general, about 15% of Floridians fall below the poverty line. More Blacks, higher percentage of Blacks, higher percentage of Hispanics. And what we're concerned about today is the 21% of children across Florida who are living in poverty. I'll be talking about some of the impact of poverty life. We're finding out more and more that living in poverty has serious consequences. In Washington, D.C., a recent study, there was a 17-year difference in life expectancy between those who lived in the poshest part of town compared to those who lived in the low-end part of town, which is a significant problem. And the United Nations has analyzed the United States poverty population, decided we are very deficient in providing services. In Pepin County, you're in Pasco County, your rate is lower for whites and Blacks. For Hispanics, about the same, but your child poverty rate is 1 in 4 as opposed to 1 in 5 statewide. So you have a significant problem in being able to provide for the children, and particularly the children under the age of 6, which is the time when bodies and brains are developing, and a significant time where children have to have adequate nutrition, adequate health care. Gandhi told us that poverty is the worst form of violence. And Martin Luther King Jr. also referred to poverty as violence. And we don't often think of that connection in our society, but when we look at the results of poverty, they can be much more destructive than some of the other problems we have. The Coalition on Human Needs estimates that 2.5 million people nationally have fallen into poverty since May of 2020 as a result of the COVID, obviously. Nelson Mandela suggests that overcoming poverty is not a gesture of charity. It's the protection of a fundamental human right, the right to dignity and to a decent life. And that's what I will be focusing on. What we found out with the advent of COVID, what many of us found out, some of us knew, was that the people who fall into poverty are not necessarily that different from you and I. And during COVID, people lost their financial resources. They lost their income, immediately fell into poverty, and were needing all of the basic needs of life. So I am using the definition for this discussion of poverty as being a lack of financial resources. Poverty is a state of not having enough money to meet the needs that you and your family have. A recent survey by the American Values Institute quizzed Americans, and I think with the advent of COVID, they are changing their attitude about how to help people. 79% of all Americans said we need a major policy change to help everyday Americans. 70% agreed that we should guarantee all Americans a minimum income, focusing on the fact that COVID, the one thing we could provide in a couple of different steps was income, money, so people could make their own decisions and take care of their lives. There also 83% agreed that we should have affordable childcare for all families who need it. Poverty creates issues. Poverty in itself creates the issues. There have been studies on poor people, and we have assumed in my whole career, that poor people were poor because they had some deficiency in some aspect of their life. And what we've been able to do within the last 10 years is study poverty and separate out the underlying conditions the person had before they became poor, and then the impact once they're poor. And they're finding out that poverty itself creates a lot of the issues that we have for a long time blamed poor people for having. Poor health. If you're poor, you don't have adequate health care. You don't have adequate nutrition. And we have done study after study showing that the brain development of a child between the age of birth and age 6 is extremely important. And when there's not adequate nutrition and adequate health care during this stage, that child will not develop the brain that child will need to be successful as they get older. Once you fall into poverty, as Steffan was telling us, people are going to be evicted. They're going to lose their housing. They're going to be homeless. So you lose the ability to live in a housing that's not rat infested, that's not full of lead, that's not mold infested, because you're unable to pay for currently I think about $900 a month for a 2-bedroom in our area. Your education options become limited by being poor. Some of these specialty schools available in Pinellas County, and I'm sure in Pasco County, are not available with transportation. So that eliminates the ability of low-income children to be able to attend some of the specialty schools. And certainly they're not going to be able to continue in college. Family stability. If you remember, when COVID was first talked about, it was discussed that we would see an increase in domestic violence. We would see an increase in child abuse. Not because the people had changed, but because financial difficulties put an awful lot of stress on individuals. We've also found that women in particular raising young children in poverty situations, we often find having an underlying depression as a result of the lifestyle that they're forced to live. Neighborhood stability is affected by poverty. Law enforcement interactions. Poor people are often overrepresented with law enforcement or underrepresented, and we're finding many lose their job, lose their housing because they're unable to pay fairly minor fines that you and I would be able to cover should we get picked up for speeding or something like that. COVID is making everything worse, obviously. More competition for rentals, difficulties with feeding your children, as you've heard earlier in the year. The Census Bureau does a survey every week, and they found that only 32% of households, that would be 1/3 of households, this is in the United States, were confident that they could meet their rent the next month. And as Steffan was saying, in December, we're expecting a rash of evictions. We have had a lot of funding in our counties, the CARES funding to help supplement the rent that people have been expected to pay. But there are groups in our counties who are not covered by that. You have to be a citizen. So if you're not a citizen of the US, you are not able to have any assistance with any of your needs. The current programs that we're looking at the League are the TANF program, which is the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, which is a cash assistance program available in every state. And each state sets its own definition of what is an adequacy of income for their program. In Florida, if you are a mother with 2 children, you are eligible for $305 a month. And I'm not sure where you can live for $305 a month. You're also eligible for food stamps, SNAP as it's called, and you'd be eligible for about $500 worth of food stamps, but those can only be used for food items. So you have other items like transportation and other activities that you're not going to be able to afford. And if I add the 2 of those together, that would be an annual income for a family of 3 of $9,600. And the poverty level for a family of 3 is $2,107.20. So we are not moving people out of poverty with the meager assistance program that we have with our TANF program. SNAP is the old food stamp program, and that has been increased during the COVID crisis so that people are eligible for additional food stamps. And some of the educational programs, food programs, are hooking on to the SNAP program to increase it so families are able to afford to pay for lunches for their children. The WIC program, Women, Infant, and Children, is for pregnant women and young children, and it provides supplemental coupons for food. And then the Medicaid program in the state of Florida covers only families, children, and older people. It does not cover single adults. Many states have, with the Affordable Care Act, added on an expanded Medicaid program to cover people who are not covered by insurance. Florida, we have asked them for 5 years in a row now to add the expanded Medicare, and it has not happened. Now this year we're doing a full court press, so we're hoping we might be able to be successful. But in my county, which is Pinellas, we have 32,000 people who are unable to get medical care. So the problems we have currently are access, adequacy, harsh cutoff points. You're either eligible for the program or you're cut off. There is no in between, and the healthcare needs as well. The League of Women Voters is recommending these issues to be taken up with the legislature, provide more affordable housing. Pinellas County has a waiting list of 5,000 people for a housing, and we are not by any means building 5,000 additional housing units. So this becomes very important because as Steffan was saying, people are spending much too much of their income for housing needs that they need for other services. Child care, we also are promoting child care, especially for low-income parents, expanded Medicaid, increasing the TANF benefits, and increasing public transportation. The last thing I want to mention is Congress 3 years ago allocated $800,000 to the National Science Institute to study poverty. And the goal was to come up with programs that would raise children out of poverty in the United States. And these were the 4 things that they recommended: increasing the earned income tax credit, which is an add-on for individuals who work most of the year, but they're working for a low income. Refunding the child tax credit. All of us, if we have children, can claim a $2,000 tax credit each year. This would turn it into a cash payment for low-income households. Increasing the food program by 35% and increasing housing vouchers. What was interesting, they studied all of the programs that we use to try to reduce poverty, and all of their solutions ended up really replacing income and not necessarily providing services, which is what we've been probably more focused on. So I think I must be out of time or overtime. Christine, she's looking at me like, oh my gosh.
A little over, maybe a little over, Beth, but I couldn't stop you. I had to know what you wanted to share with us. So
sorry about that.
Everybody else did too. So thank you so much. Thank you very much, Beth. And I'm going to introduce our 5th speaker, and that's Dianna Thomas with the Thomas Promise Foundation. Dianna Thomas is the secretary of the Thomas Promise Foundation Board of Directors. She is married to Wade Thomas. owner of Thomas & Son Incorporated and founder of the Thomas Promise Foundation. She was an integral part of establishing the foundation that provides weekend lunches to food insecure students and still works tirelessly helping to fulfill the foundation's mission. Born in Long Island, New York, Dianna came to Zephyr Hills when she was just 1 year old. Dianna's daughter, Brooke, was the inspiration for the Thomas Promise Foundation. Welcome, Dianna.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you, everybody, for this wonderful event and putting us with so many people that we can connect with. As Christine said, I am with the Thomas Promise Foundation, and as Patti Templeton previously stated, we handle the east side of Pasco County with the Weekend Backpack Program. This program was inspired by my daughter. My daughter is now 17. But at the age of 7, my daughter was using her lunch money at school to buy food items for classmates who didn't have the funds. And it just brought to light to us the food insecurities that were really happening in our county. And at the time, we were just unaware of that. And we were mind blown to find out how much food insecurity is going on with our children. As Patti Templeton said, so I won't take a lot of time because we do a lot of the same things that they do. We provide weekend food bags that include breakfast, lunch, snacks, dinners, and drinks to close to 2,000 students every week in East Pasco County. I know a previous question came up during her presentation about the Meadow Point Loop. Just to quickly say, we do have 2 schools in that area that we work with, which is Double Branch Ranch and John Long. We are very, very lucky to have an amazing group of volunteers that come to our foundation 2 to 3 days a week to help assist in packing these food bags. And then on Wednesdays and Thursdays, we deliver them to our schools so the kids have the items to take home with them on the weekends. Throughout the program, we're happy to say that we last year surpassed 1 million food bags that have went out. And we would not be able to do what we do without the wonderful people in our community, the partnerships that we have with businesses, with organizations like United Way. They're amazing for us. Almost all of our fundings now, especially since COVID, has taken away a lot of our fundraising that we did do. A lot of our finances now come through grant writing. So we've been very fortunate for the government programs that have opened up to us to help us. Because as Patti was saying, we anticipated that we would see a reduction in numbers through COVID, but essentially our numbers did go up. The need grew tremendously throughout COVID, and we had to rework the way we do things because we had to start providing food more often and had to figure out more creative ways to get the food to the families because previously they were going home with the children from the schools. I also want to take a quick second and thank our school board as well. They did an amazing job over the summer. They allowed us to take our food bags to the schools during their food pickup times. So while they were providing the meals for the students through the week, we were able to send home our weekend food bags. So our children's were making sure they were fed all week long during this time out of school. We've also have been able to extend our program through the summers as well. We partner during the summer with the Elks Lodge in Zephyr Hills, and they open up their center Monday through Friday during the summer, and they feed families hot meals, and we send meals home with them for the weekends. So we've been very, very lucky that we've been able to extend our feed-in program as a year-round service now instead of just during the school year. Like I said, I know Patti did a wonderful job of really going through what the weekend food program does. So I won't take up a lot of your time, and I know we're gonna have lots of questions at the end. So please feel free to ask me any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Diana. Thanks very much. We do have many questions. Chris, are you ready to ask some of these questions of our panel members?
I'm going to ask this last question and then hand it over to Cass since I have feedback here. But I appreciated the last question that was asked that said, to what extent do all of you work with local and state officials? And I would add to that, share volunteer opportunities if you haven't already. And we can start with Diana.
Hi. We are, I'd say to start with the state officials, we have minimum contact, unfortunately, with state officials. We do have some local officials like Danny Burgess was just recently brought on into the Senate. He lives in Zephyr Hills. He has assisted us. We have a county commissioner that's local to our area that has been very helpful in helping us get in contact with people in need. But I'd say it's probably a little bit minimal compared to what maybe some of the other speakers have, just because we work basically just within our county. And I'm sorry, and what was that other question? You had a second part to that question.
If there are any, if somebody wants to volunteer.
Yes, ma'am. We do have volunteer opportunities during the week if someone would like to come in and help pack the bags, or on Wednesdays and Thursdays if they would like to help distribute them, because we do transport these items to each one of our schools. So it is about a 2-day process. You can go to thethomaspromise.org, and there's a link on our website that you can contact us for volunteer opportunities.
Any other panel members? Would you like to address the question about your partnerships or interaction with public officials and your volunteer opportunities? Steffan?
Yeah, we work really closely with the county government. We actually work with the county government, the federal government. Unfortunately, not so much the state government. We just haven't made that connection yet. But I would say our strongest relationship is definitely with the county government. We have a commissioner who sits on our board, who is actually now the property appraiser, Mike Wells. And we also have a staff member from Gus Villarakis' office on our board as well. We work incredibly close with the county government to kind of make sure that there's no duplication of services. So the county offers like emergency assistance as well. So we try to make sure that, and they also offer funding to other agencies. So we try to make sure that we're not duplicative of who we're funding. So if we're funding this program to address this need, we want to make sure that we're not funding the same program twice or something like that. So we work with a board member as well who sits on our board, who's the public administrator, Kathy Pearson. And we work with her staff to kind of go over what are they focusing on and making sure that our efforts are not only not duplicated, but we're making the most impact with those efforts as well. We serve as kind of the county actually gives us $250,000 a year for what's called outside agency allocations. So what this is the county government wants to fund agencies, but they want to kind of have it go through a review process. We serve as that review process and we distribute those funds. We could serve very similarly for federal government funds as well for what's called EFSP, Emergency Food and Shelter funds, EFSP. We normally do a couple rounds of those a year. Those normally range from $50,000 to $60,000 a year. And those are normally coming from FEMA as well to kind of address food and emergency shelter as well. So we actually work really closely with federal and county. Unfortunately, we haven't made that relationship with the state so much.
Okay. Beth?
The League of Women Voters is all about politics. They study issues and come to conclusions on what should happen, and a lot of their focus is on connecting with legislators, trying to change legislation to meet the needs of the population they're working with. Poverty is one of their issues, but they also work on voting issues, on the environmental issues, health issues, juvenile justice issues. And the entire league system is a voluntary system. So you can join the league in your county and become a part of a statewide effort. They hire lobbyists during the legislative session so that our points of view, if you look at the sign behind Christine, the advocacy and the impact part of the sign are all working with local politicians and state politicians, trying to work on the programs that we've decided are important for the citizens of the state of Wisconsin. So you're all welcome to come and volunteer with us.
Thanks, Beth. Any other? Ashley, did you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Because we are a federally funded program, we rely heavily on working with the state to make sure that our program consistently receives funding. We have a School Nutrition Association of Pasco County that consists of many of our employees who will actually go out and advocate for our program in Tallahassee and in Washington, D.C. And I think that our program, a big part of the ability of our waivers to be extended for us to be able to feed all of the children in our community was for so many of us that are in student nutrition, me personally included, wrote letters to many of our state legislators to encourage them to expand funding for our programs. And then as far as volunteering, every school is going to have kind of different volunteer opportunities. What I'll do is I'll post a link in the chat box for anybody that is interested in volunteering. You can reach out to our volunteer coordinator.
Great, great. A lot of the questions in the chat box are about what can we do? How can we volunteer? What do you want us to ask the legislators and the county commission for? Can we write letters? What can we do to help? So anyone else want to respond? Any other panel member want to respond to those questions about, your interface with government? And
yeah, I was just going to say we work closely with the county government. We have the county administrator as one of our board members for One Community Now, and then we work with when the need is there. So, for instance, when COVID-19 first hit and the schools were closed, and we knew we needed to still get the PACAS Act to families, we reached out to our county commissioners and just to see what they could do to help. And they did try to help us by connecting to us with either funders and volunteers. We were able to communicate through the school. Pasco County Schools worked real closely with us. So our relationship's more with the county level.
Okay. Cass is our other chat reader here, a member of the Pasco Unit League. Cass, are there any other questions in the chat that you were tracking that you wanted to ask the panel members?
There's one here for Ashley. Are there any challenges from families without cars? You had buses doing some of the distributions this summer. Is there any need for this now?
I would say there's definitely been challenges. We have heard from parents that who don't have cars and aren't able to travel to our schools to pick up meals. The good thing about our emergency waivers are that parents are able to visit any school that's closest to them, not necessarily the school that their student is enrolled in. And then as far as if they don't have a vehicle, we have a lot of families that have told us that they have friends or other family members that have gone out and picked up the meals for them. So because of our emergency waivers, that is something that you are able to do. You will just provide a student number or a Pasco County address, and you can have somebody else that does have a vehicle pick up those meals for your children.
Okay, thank you. And Beth, this one is for Beth. What is the racial wealth gap simulation that the Upper Pinellas League is sponsoring with Bread for the World next Saturday?
Oh, good. Someone's promoting my advertising. I like that. I forgot to do it at the end because I was so rushed from time. Thank you, Christine. Next Saturday at 10:30, and it's available on Zoom, we are having Bread for the World do a presentation on the racial wealth gap. We understand that the racial wealth gap between whites and blacks is about 10-to-1. There are reasons for that. It didn't happen accidentally, and it's not because one part of the population is not trying. But through government policies consistently over time, we have created an enormous wealth gap. So program will be about an hour and a half, and it's a chance to do a simulation in terms of looking at some of the policies that have happened and how they have impacted the white population versus the black population. It's free and you can sign up, and I think we can send, I think Christine has a brochure on it that she can maybe send out to everybody.
I can, but I also wanted to say that if you Google, North Pinellas League of Women Voters, it comes right up. It's a recurring event, and you can link and register there. I don't have the registration link. I'm so sorry, Beth. I did want to make sure everybody on this Zoom event, our panel, knows about it, because I think it would be very informative. Also.
We welcome you all to join us. It should be a very exciting morning.
North Pinellas League of Women Voters. If you go out, their events will come up and you'll see the registration link. Okay, any other questions, Cass?
Yeah, Susan Smith wanted to know from the panel, in your opinion, what is the most effective way to eliminate poverty?
I know. I've been telling you for my whole presentation, give people the money to be able to live adequately in our society, and they will prosper. And it will be, we are spending millions of dollars, billions of dollars in services that are not changing the poverty rate. We need to be looking at it as we did with COVID. These people have an employment loss. We need to replace their employment income. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we have from Patti Templeton to everyone. Affordable housing needs to become a priority since most of the families we are working with are not able to afford their housing, and they have to choose between paying for their housing, utilities, or food. Many families are double and tripled up living in substandard housing. And that was for everyone.
That's a comment from Patty, and I think Patty she had the other commitment today, family commitment, and she may have left the call. I don't see her up here right now.
And this is from Chris Kahn. What scenarios of children hunger are unmet? And that was for everyone. So she wants to know what scenarios of children and hunger are unmet.
You know, I would just say what we've said before, I think, is that rent comes first. I mean, there are certain, and utilities come second, I would guess, or vice versa. And if you don't have enough income, any family that can't provide the rent and the utility is probably going to be taking the funding from their food budget. So that would be my reaction. It could be anyone, but people who lose their employment, lose their source of income.
I'll clarify that. Here in Pasco County, you all are doing a lot. is there one space that's not being covered in Pasco?
I think one area that there's a possible gap in is the homeless population. So a lot of the meals distribution is actually meals that are they're taken home to be cooked or prepared in a home environment. So for an example, like for Thanksgiving or Christmas, there's a big turkey drives where people are getting turkeys, but people without homes have no ability to cook those turkeys. So getting cooked meals out is normally a kind of an unmet challenge. That's something that we were doing we are doing with Operation Feed Pasco, but again, that ends January 1, and so I think that's one area that could be probably a gap that could be better filled.
You know what, I'd have to agree there with Steffan. The hot meals is definitely has been very good. We actually have the opportunity to work and partner with the United Way and help send out hot meals, which is still going on now. And that program alone, we're able to reach out to an extra 100 kids a day and make sure that on top of the non-perishable items, they are also receiving hot meals. So I agree that probably is an area that could use some assistance. It's finding out a way to reach out more to people that are homeless or maybe, you know, not even homeless as on streets homeless, but homeless in the aspect they're in transition. We see a lot of our older children, our high school kids that go couch to couch. Their home situation is not the best, so they just spend a week or two at one friend's house and then maybe a night or two at another's. So I agree, that's probably an untapped area that could do some work.
This is Pat Dwyer. I'd like to make a comment. I don't know if you are aware of what the St. Vincent de Paul Society is doing. I noticed in one of the presentations that Port Richey has a problem where there are a lot of people who are low income. The St. Vincent de Paul Society has built 30 apartments in Port Richey for homeless and low income people. In addition to those apartments, there is a social worker on site to work with these people because oftentimes they have drug or alcohol problems, and they are building another additional 30 apartments in Port Richey. I don't know if you people are aware of that.
Well, that's great to hear, Pat. And how are they funded? How's that housing funded? Do you know?
Well, how it all came about, the Veterans Administration in Washington, D.C. noted that we had done a lot of work with veterans, and that is because of our home visits. You know, if people need help with rent or electricity, in order to get that help from the St. Vincent de Paul Society, a home visit is done. And I did many of those. So anyway, they gave a grant of money, and a lot of things went on in Pinellas County, first of all. Now they're going on in Pasco County because they saw how effective the program was, that they've given more grant money. And I think the St. Vincent de Paul Society, CARES it's called, it's not the other program, has gotten over $9 million to work on homelessness with veterans and low-income families. So this is something that's sort of under the radar. People don't really know about it, but I think it's been very effective. And what one of your other people mentioned, you have to have a home. And someone said $900 for a 2-bedroom apartment. I haven't seen a 2-bedroom apartment for $900. There's something like $1,300, am I correct? I mean, they've gone up considerably. And I don't see a lot of low-income housing being built. I do see a lot of very nice luxury apartments going up everywhere.
I think we can all agree that affordable housing is another challenge, another huge challenge across the county.
Is United Way doing anything about housing? Steffan?
So we work with the Homeless Coalition, Restored Hope, a few other ones, and also one program that we're actually just starting right now is actually a housing program for human trafficking victims. So we just got a grant from the Federal Office of Victims of Crime. It's a $498,000 3-year grant, and basically what that is to get human trafficking victims into permanent housing and temporary housing, to get them out of their situation and then to get them into permanent residence. So that's a big program that we're undertaking as far as housing is concerned. But we've one of our biggest recipients of funding for the past decade has been the Homeless Coalition.
Okay.
Another question for Stephen. Is there a need for volunteers to deliver to the homeless, or is it just funding that is needed? And that's
So I can't speak for the agencies themselves that are the ones doing the direct service. United Way, traditional United Way role is more of a fiduciary of funds, not so much direct service. Now, as far as I would reach out to those direct service agencies such as, Thomas Promise, One Community Now, Volunteer Way, Sword and Spoon, and reach out to them and see if they're in need of volunteers. But of course, funding is always what is needed. Hot meals are expensive. That's the thing. So once that CARES money runs out, our ability to continue providing those hot meals the way we have been won't be there. It won't be possible. So funding is always needed. But I would also, as far as volunteers concerned, I would reach out to those direct service agencies.
I think, Dianna, you mentioned that was something kind of on your foundation's radar screen, that you've seen, the need for hot meals for people who do not have a safe or a steady place of residence. I'm going to, if there aren't any other questions, I'm going to begin to close our session. And I'm going to ask Cindy to put up the closing slide while I say my thank yous here this afternoon. Because on that slide, there are the links to both of the foundations and the organizations that are feeding school-age children in Pasco. So if you are interested in volunteering and you want to connect with them about how to volunteer, you need to just go to their websites and connect up with those organizations. And I'm sure they are always looking for helping hands, and we'll be able to connect you and help you volunteer.
Christine, someone asked how they could donate. Will we put something up for each of the?
You can donate. You can also donate by going to those websites. And, on the website, there'll be a donate button, and you can open that up and donate. And I'm sure all of your donations, any of your donations are welcome. Okay, the thomaspromise.org and onecommunitynow.com. Also, League members on the call, if you're interested in joining the Pasco Unit Poverty Action Team, you can email pasco@hclwv.org. Mike McKinney, who's on the call today, who is the vice chair of the Pasco Unit and past president of the Hillsborough League, is the contact point for that. I'll be sending out an email to League members about joining a Poverty Action Team through the League. Beth asked us to make sure you know that some of the data that she shared with you today, some of the data and more data is available from Florida Kids Count through the Child and Family Studies at USF, and including a child well-being chart, and they're available upon request. So if you email, again, pasco@hclwv.org, I will get you or send the PDFs with that information. Okay, I want to thank everyone today. Every panel member. It was just an excellent panel today. I know that we're all much better informed. I know that we all have a much better idea how to volunteer and how to help. And I hope that the panel discussion adds to the efforts being made by so many in Pasco County to alleviate food insecurity. And thank you again. And we may follow up. We may follow up in a few months with how everyone is doing, how organizations are doing, and what more we can do. Like Beth said, we are an advocacy organization, so we're going to be following up with an advocacy agenda with state legislators, and the county commission, and our federal legislators too, about hunger in our communities. So I wish all of you a nice rest of the afternoon. I thank you all for your hard work helping people. It's a wonderful thing to see.